a breath of fresh air, that he was a new light, you know, in the political arena. He had fresh ideas, he was young, but there was always kind of that lingering, you know, that happened.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. You know, to have a president assassinated was shocking. It made the country think more about what government is all about. And I think it brought young people more into politics and more aware.
Kennedy assassinated, shocked Americans read from the headlines. In just one day, the whole country had been turned upside down, as one of the most beloved leaders in American history had been assassinated. November 22nd, 1963, the presidential motorcade in Texas. John F. Kennedy was planning on running for re-election for president in 1964, and he wanted to use the motorcade as a launch pad for this campaign. Kennedy's other goal in mind for this motorcade was to settle tension in the Democratic Party between Democratic Governor of Texas, John Connally, and Democratic Senator Ron Yarborough. In this picture, you can see John Connally to the right of John F. Kennedy. Behind the two is Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson. We'll get to him later. This motorcade was important enough to John F. Kennedy that he brought along his wife, Jackie Kennedy, who rarely made appearances for political outings with him. After opening their day in Fort Worth, the Kennedys and the Connollys flew to Dallas. They were joined by Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, but he flew in a different plane, which was normal procedure to prevent a double tragedy in the case of the plane crashing. After landing in Dallas, the motorcade could begin. The Kennedys and the Connollys rode in John Kennedy's Lincoln convertible. Behind their car was a Secret Service car, and behind that car was Mr. and Mrs. Lyndon B. Johnson and Texas Senator Ron Yarborough. For a place usually known for conservatism, the crowds at the motorcade were unusually large and enthusiastic. It's important to note that this is the same place where in 1960, Lyndon B. Johnson and his wife were almost mobbed by a group in a hotel lobby. The route was about to take Kennedy's Lincoln convertible under a triple underpass between Elm Street, Commerce Street, and Main Street, when suddenly,
I was 21 and I was working for a paper company called Carrollton Envelope, and they were a part of Kimberly-Clark, which I think is still going. And I worked in administration, and I was at work, and the boss came out and turned down the radio, and of course, you know, all the news was about him getting shot, and so we listened to it most of the day, and finally it was confirmed, you know, that he was dead, and that was so shocking, totally shocking.
At 12:30 p.m., gunshots rang out, bringing the crowd at the motorcade into a panic. John F. Kennedy was shot directly in the head. Among those injured was also Governor John Connally. Kennedy was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where a plethora of resuscitative measures were tried on him, including oxygen, anesthesia, an endotracheal tube, a tracheotomy, blood, and fluids. A short pulse was able to be brought back with each of these attempts, but it was to no avail. John F. Kennedy was pronounced dead at 1 o'clock Central Time. Malcolm Kilduff, with a choked up throat and red eyes, made the announcement to the press at 1:36.
Do it again. John F. Kennedy died at approximately 1 o'clock
Central Standard Time today here in Dallas. He died of a gunshot wound in the brain. Slow it down. I have no other details regarding the assassination of the president.
24-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald was identified as the killer. After shooting and killing a first police officer who approached him, he was captured by a second police officer inside of a movie theater. At 2:39 p.m., just 99 minutes after John F. Kennedy had been shot, Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn into office on the presidential jet, Jackie Kennedy standing next to him, with JFK's blood still smeared on her clothes. Thus, Lyndon B. Johnson had succeeded John F. Kennedy as the next president of the United States.
The elevator bringing Oswald from the fourth floor jail cell to the lower level, the basement of City Hall. He is escorted out of the elevator, led by Chief Homicide Investigator Captain Will Fritz and other detectives and uniformed policemen. Oswald was to be transferred by armored car. Now watch. At that point, pandemonium broke out.
2 days later, after police had deemed that Oswald was no longer needed for the investigation, they planned to turn him over to the county sheriff. When asked what time this would take place, Police Chief Jesse Curry said, quote, "If you fellows are here by 10 a.m., you'll be early enough." When checking the media's credentials before allowing them to come with him, Jack Ruby, being known by many of the police officers, was not asked any questions. The police took Oswald to the basement in an elevator, followed by the media. After being led through the booking office of the police station, he was brought to an open corridor where hundreds of civilians were waiting for him, barred by the police. Just when the police were about to take Oswald up a ramp that would lead them to the armored car they were to place him in, Jack Ruby jumped in front of them and shot Lee Harvey Oswald point blank in the chest. It was approximately 11:20 a.m. Surgery was attempted on Oswald to save his life, but just like John F. Kennedy, it was to no avail. Lee Harvey Oswald was pronounced dead at 1:07 p.m. More importantly, because he was murdered, Lee Harvey Oswald never stood trial. A question that still sparks controversy today and may never be fully answered is, did Lee Harvey Oswald act alone in the assassination of John F. Kennedy? My interview subject, Joan Funzig, provides her thoughts.
It's hard to believe that one person was behind that, and was able to pull off something like that. It's hard to believe, but they've never been able to come up with any kind of, so I don't know, I'm with everybody else. Will we ever find out? Will we ever know? But it's my personal opinion that he could not have done it alone.
Though it may seem extremely unlikely that anybody else was involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, consider the following. The CIA has acknowledged that their station in Mexico City had Lee Harvey Oswald under surveillance while he took a 6-day trip to Mexico City to meet with Cuban and Soviet diplomats and spies. Among those in contact with Oswald during his trip to Mexico City was an assassinations expert for the Soviet Security Agency. A 1964 FBI report, which wasn't made public until the 1990s, suggests that Oswald may have even been threatening to kill John F. Kennedy while with Cuban diplomats in Mexico. While this information doesn't fully prove nor disprove that Lee Harvey Oswald had help in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, it's interesting to think that the US government knew of his relations with Cuban and Soviet diplomats, but didn't do anything about it. Regardless, however, of whether Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone or with help, the day of John F. Kennedy's assassination is a day that will forever live in infamy, and a day that shocked and turned the country upside down.